Thank you all very much indeed for coming along to the RDS this morning. This, as you know, is part of our Vision 2030 series, which is organised by the Enterprise Committee. And we are adopting a theme of sustainability over the next year or so, but it's looking at all the aspects of things that contribute to the resilience and sustainability of the Irish economy. And hence we're discussing research and innovation today, which is an essential pillar of it. Just to let you know, my name is Dermot Breen. I'm a member of the Enterprise Committee, but in another guise, I'm on the governing body of UCC, and I chair the Committee on Strategy, Research and Innovation there, hence my interest in the subject matter today, and one of the reasons we're actually having this. If I just say that research and innovation are now foundations of modern economies, and investment in research is going to be central. It currently is, but it's going to be even more central to Ireland's economic resilience going forward. At the moment, we're ranked in the top 20 on the Bloomberg Research and Innovation Index worldwide. We've been as high as 13 on that. So we are rated very highly, and we are highly regarded for our scientific and innovation strengths. So we should recognise that and play to those strengths. Our universities are the bedrock of our research and innovation, and we have a very strong infrastructure in place across all the universities, but also very importantly with the 16 national research centres which are formed by SFI over recent years. It's useful to recognise the range of those, that because they embrace technologies from nanotechnology, microelectronics, data analytics, biomedical, pharmaceuticals, energy and sustainability, photonics, digitalisation, bioeconomy, Internet of Things and so on. So there's a fantastic range of disciplines and research being conducted right across our university system and in the SFI centres. And I think it's important to understand as well that much of that science and research is actually world class. We have some world-class researchers in our system here, and will compete with the best from America or Singapore or Saudi or from Korea and so on. The thing about these, they are actually all of them are partnerships in some way with state institutions, European institutions, and industry partners, and that has created an enviable wealth of talent that we have, talent and creativity that we have in the system. And much of that work has been commercialised over recent years, and this is a topic we will be discussing as well this morning. If you think of the very recent successes, such as inflammasome out of Trinity College, Precision Biotics out of UCC, and even going back to Iona Technologies out of Trinity, which was the first of the major university commercialisations I think it's nearly 30 years, about 30 years ago now. So there's a huge wealth of talent there that can be utilised for economic benefit and commercialisation. And as well as that, there is vast potential in the system. 3 of our universities currently earn research income and investment in excess of 100 million a year. That's Trinity, UCC and UCD. It's in excess of 100 million a year. So this is a very large-scale project, very large-scale opportunity. But the great opportunity that we all face, that we all have at our fingertips at the moment, is the 95 billion euros in the Horizon Europe Research Fund. That is an outstanding and incredible opportunity for all the Irish research and innovation system, and particularly the universities. So maybe we'll explore that. So during today's discussion, we have a very eminent panel to talk about. I won't introduce them, they'll introduce themselves. But some of the issues we might usefully explore today are we focused and investing sufficiently in the grand challenges and the things that really matter? Have we got our focus on our priorities? Are we clear what our priorities are, and are we investing and supporting investment in our priorities? Are we structured to address those challenges? How can we expand and retain our talent base? How do we enhance our international standing, perhaps with an objective of moving into the top 10 instead of the top 20? Can we increase our pro rata share of the Horizon Europe funds? How do we strengthen researcher-investor partnerships? How do we generate more spin-offs and realise greater economic and commercial success, as well as societal gain for Ireland? So I'm going to leave that to Sean and the panel to discuss today. There will be an opportunity for questions after the main discussion, so feel free, and Sean will invite that when the time arrives. So at this stage, I'll leave it over to Sean, who is one of Ireland's leading interviewers and one of Ireland's best-known golfers. Sean.
He was going so well until he mentioned the golf. Dermot, thank you indeed. We have, as Dermot said, a first-rate panel to offer us insights on our topic du jour, from research to enterprise, scaling R&D to deliver a sustainable economy. They're all well known to many of you, but they're not well known to all of you. So I thought, rather than me introduce them and go through a long list of their distinctions and to recite their CVs, I think it's better if they introduce themselves. So Orla Feely, I think we'll start with yourself, UCD Vice President for Research, Innovation and Impact Research. Tell us more.
That's right, Sean. So I'm an engineer by background. I'm also past president of Engineers Ireland, another group that has an awful lot to play into Ireland's sustainable R&D ecosystem. So UCD, you know UCD is a very large and broad-based university, a very research-intensive university conducting research across all our domains. The financial year that just closed at the end of September was our best ever for research income. We brought in over 155 million in research grants. So this is a really significant enterprise that you're talking about. And of course, the innovation outputs of that are very important to us. Many of you will know Nova UCD there along the N11 in one of our old estate houses. We've recently conducted an extension there that has almost doubled it in size. So we have a huge opportunity there for entrepreneurs, both those who grow out of our campus and those who move into our campus to work with our research base, and lots of really exciting things happening there. Dermot mentioned European funding, big priority for us in UCD. Again, in the year just past, we currently are 17th among all universities in Europe and first in Ireland for drawing down Horizon Europe funding. We've really mobilised very strategically around that, and we're seeing big success. So lots to talk about.
Wonderful, Orla. Thank you so much. Pardon me, Phillip Nolan, Director of Science Foundation Ireland, having arrived there relatively recently by a very interesting route. Again, please tell us more.
Yeah, actually started my science career in this building in the 1982 then Aer Lingus Young Scientist competition with the project in physics, actually. Never could make up my mind whether I wanted to be an electronic engineer or a medic, and opted for medicine. So I did medicine, physiology, and then joined the faculty in UCD, spent 25 years in UCD, eventually as vice president academic, 10 years in Maynooth. So I know the university system extremely well, which is both good and bad for them at the same time. And now in Science Foundation Ireland. And our job is to foster and build research talent and research capacity in and across institutions such as UCD, across the entire higher education system in Ireland, and build that capacity for world-class research. That's our benchmark. And collaborative across the institutions, collaborative with enterprise and society, and supporting Orla and her colleagues in building that leverage to really connect us into Europe and to draw down that funding.
And we'll develop that in a few minutes. And John McKeon, CEO of Allergy Standards and also entrepreneur in residence in Trinity College.
Sure, thanks Sean. And, wonderful to be back in the RDS after being away for so long. Congratulations on your innovation series. Like Philip, I'm a medic. I did medicine in Trinity, but I suppose I'm the representative entrepreneur on the panel. So just very briefly tell you about my company. We certify consumer products that are suitable for people with asthma and allergy. So one very busy night in the emergency department in the old Harcourt Street, which is the old children's hospital in Harcourt Street. Lots of mums with kids with asthma and allergy would ask me, look, doctors, there's something we can do to stay well rather than relying on you when we become sick. And medicine now is very about being proactive, and being well isn't purely the absence of disease. And when you're talking about asthma, particularly allergic asthma, you're talking about trigger factors, the things that set off your symptoms, and that's very much related to the indoor environment and all the products and consumer products we use in the indoor environment, like our pillows, our vacuum cleaners, cleaning products and things like that. And one of the mums actually said, look, wouldn't it be fantastic if there was a little logo, a little, like the Guaranteed Irish mark, that when we bought consumer products would tell us this was free from allergy triggers or actually help us improve our indoor environment. And that was my research. We're going to talk a lot about years of university research, but that was my bit of intellectual property, that idea. Well, if we could test these products and then we could label them, could we actually then identify them as better choices for people with asthma and allergy? So I was a medic. who then was a spin-in. At the time, it was the DIT Hothouse program, similar to Nova UCD, and Trinity now have a boot camp and innovation program. And then my company set up in one of those incubator programs and then liaised with industry and did innovation. And now we run a whole certification program in the US. We're now looking at indoor environments and testing indoor environments, what actually is a healthy building, a healthy home. And now we're moving into clinical trials in the US, looking at are people living in healthy environments actually healthier? And obviously there was an acceleration of that with COVID. So that's my kind of story, and I look forward to getting into the discussion. But we're the other way, we're almost like a spin in and then collaborating rather than university research spinning out and being commercialized.
Philip, you inherited, I think, a 5-year strategy when you took over at SFI. I'd imagine you have been looking at that and seeing, look, does it need to be finessed? But give us an overview about how things are. How is the state of research innovation and the way things are? I mean, Dermot mentioned about the big pot of money that's there, 95 billion at European level. So what are your first thoughts on having got your feet under the desk?
So the first thought is things are actually very good. And I need to say that's one of the things I learned during the pandemic. If things are good, you better say they're good, because it might not always be so. So let's celebrate the success that we've had. I mean, we are 6th in Europe on the European Innovation Scoreboard. If you look down that league table, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, then there's a gap. Then there's Ireland, and then there's France, Germany, and others behind us. So we score 130, Sweden scores 150, France and Germany 115, on a very decent index of the full ecosystem of innovation in a country. So to a certain extent, and in particular in the kind of research that translates into immediate or short-term societal and economic benefit, we're performing extremely well by international standards. The second statistic, and then I'll move on. Institute of Physics did a UK and Ireland-wide survey of physics-based enterprises and asked them, how do you access academic expertise and infrastructure? 33% of Irish enterprises said through university partnerships, some sponsored by SFI, many sponsored by institutions themselves, 17% of UK-based enterprises. So we're twice the British Isles kind of norm for engagement between academia and enterprise. What concerns me, the bit that concerns me is we're still dining out to a certain extent on massive investments in fundamental research that are pre-global financial crisis. So the people and the infrastructure we're using were the last big wave of investment. There's plenty going on in the interim, and Dermot mentioned SFI research centres, which are a real hotbed of innovative research. But the big strategic thing we need to do over the next 5 to 10 years is renew our investment in the fundamentals of physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, and the skills in engineering, and the skills in humanities and social sciences that explain all of this, where we want to go and how we want to change our society. If we fail to pay attention to those fundamentals, and it's our biggest weakness on the European Innovation Scoreboard, we will fail to sow the seeds for future success. So we won't be in this happy position in 10 or 15 years' time if we don't attend to the fundamentals
Orla,
now.
I think you're nodding there in agreement with Philip. So what's the fix?
A fix is a reorientation. So pendulums tend to swing very dramatically in this country. So around the time of the financial crisis, SFI in particular took, and the department that oversees it, took what was at that point a very reasonable decision to focus our research investment on industry-facing research, so the stuff that is very, very close to market, and did that really, really well, as Philip has said. And that was very important to us at the time. But you leave something behind when you do that. So we need to make sure we have a balanced research ecosystem from the deeply fundamental research that sets us up for 20 years from now. So you need to have that, as well as the industry-facing stuff. You don't want to swing back so you're only doing the fundamentals. You need the mix. You need early career researchers to be supported, as well as later career established researchers. You need arts, humanities, social sciences to be supported, just as the STEM disciplines are. So I think, number one, we need more balance. Number two, and you feel it's so trite to say it because you're always saying it, but we do need more funding. And that is, as Philip has suggested, one of the areas in that European Innovation Scorecard where we do fall short. national investment in R&D is significantly lower than it is in those countries that are the innovation leaders. So we are in the strong innovators, those are the innovation leaders. And any benchmark you take, you look at the percentage spend. So the target in our last strategy, Innovation 2020, was to get to 2.5% of GNP. It started off as 2.5% of GDP in Europe, and then we kind of slipped it back to 2.5% of GNP. We started off that strategy around 2015 at 1.55%, looking to get to 2.5%. We got up to 1.63%. So, we are way off the base in terms of what our European competitors are spending on their R&D. So, more balance and more funding.
So is it a question, John, of turning to the government, or is it a combination of public and private?
I think it's the word Orla used there, which is balance. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm always going to favour research closer to the markets. But I think that would be a mistake to actually chase that short-term goal and look at KPIs and constrain foundational research just by outcomes. But I think the conversation, is it research that we want, or do we want to have innovation, or do you want to have R&D, or do you want to have entrepreneurship? Because they're all slightly different things, and they need slightly different focus. So, for example, a lot of the times I see in universities intellectual property being licensed out of universities, and they even have offices called technology transfer officers, and their role with industry liaison is actually to have maybe some science foundation Ireland supported research, then would actually be licensed out of the university. And there may be a business model there. There's patent fees and licensing fees that go back. What I would like to see more of is companies to come out of the universities, and jobs and entrepreneurs to follow those ideas out into technology parks. And I think the institutes are great gateways to allow that. And then companies like Enterprise Ireland or other innovation and entrepreneurship groups support those ideas and build companies, not just licensing ideas out. The challenge with that is that if you are a research professor doing that research, it's very difficult then to actually set up a company, or do you postpone your research, and then if that company fails, which many do, then what do you do after that? So I think there's a real ecosystem challenge about, do we license ideas out, or do we actually try and spin out companies and have societal benefit through employment?
Do you have a view on that, Philip, as to how to get that achieved?
Yeah, and it's kind of a boring one in a way, because one of the things that we need to make sure of as Science Foundation Ireland is there are other state agencies and other actors in the system, and we shouldn't be doing their job because they're better at their job.
Yeah, but you must have learned an awful lot from practical experience during the pandemic. You were at the interface of science, medicine and government in the middle of a vast crisis that changed virtually by the day. So you must be able to draw on the experience and the observations there.
Yeah, you can bring the state together to common purpose. And that's my point. I think the big thing we need to hear is that Science Foundation Ireland and Enterprise Ireland need to be sharper in how they align their work, and there needs to be no gaps in the middle. And that is what I learned during the pandemic, is things fall through the cracks because everybody's quite siloed in what they do, and sometimes even defensive of what they do. So the first thing that needs to happen is a very significant strategic conversation between ourselves, Enterprise Ireland, and the institutions about those issues around protection of intellectual property and the flow of information and spinning in. The second thing is kind of intangible. Yes, in order to successfully commercialize a piece of research in a university, you need funding and structures, but you need these intangible things around confidence and support. So for many of our professorial colleagues, it's not that there's any risk, actually. You can step outside the university system and step back in very easily. But simply having the confidence or self-belief to say, I will translate this into a real product or a real service. It's not their core business. So one thing we really do need to invest in, and in the grand scale of things, it's a pretty marginal investment, is simply that level of support and scouting the system and saying, look, I really think you could do this, and bringing people along in that way. That's the fundamental transition we need. So better national strategy, I think. It's a good strategy, but there's gaps, and that kind of support.
Orla?
Yeah, agree completely. And there are interesting things that we're doing. So for me, an awful lot of it, as Philip has indicated, is about people. So, you know, and very often when an academic comes up with an idea, in some cases they are exactly the right person to take it all the way along its journey. A company like APC out in Cherrywood, founded by my colleague in UCD Engineering, Brian Gannon. Brilliant, brilliant company, taken all the way by Brian and Mark Barrett, who did his postdoc with him. But other times you need somebody else to come in. So that's something that we're doing a lot of in UCD, trying to match make entrepreneurs, maybe serial entrepreneurs, with the academic who might have the idea, but for whatever reason doesn't want to be the one to take it all the way. Another really interesting program we have is the BioInnovate program in Galway, where they have these BioInnovate fellows, and it's in the area of medical devices and so on, and biomedical research. So you know, a really exciting area, very geographically concentrated for us in Galway. And they got the BioInnovate fellows, and they put them in the clinical environment for a period, and then they put them in university research labs. So they really immerse them in all sides of medical device research and development, and then they are trained to go out. It's based on a program in Stanford. Then they are trained to go out and do this, you know, themselves, and many of them have gone on to be really successful entrepreneurs. So Enterprise Ireland are looking to scale that program, an immersive type program, into other areas. I think that's a great idea.
How open do you think the academics are in the various institutions to the kind of coordination and cooperation Philip was talking about? Or is there a hesitancy there? He mentioned silos, for instance, and people don't want to be told or directed too much about how they do their business.
Well, you know, academics are sensible people, and they can, you know, read
but
the
they
writing
treasure
on the
their
wall and so on.
independence, don't they?
Well, they treasure their academic freedom, and rightly so. But at the same time, they want to make sure that their ideas get out there into the world. And all the dynamics in academia at the moment are that if you hide away in your ivory tower, that is not the way to success. It's about making sure that your ideas get out into the world, which is, you know, human beings, everybody wants to do. You want to see your work make a difference. And people very much understand that there are schemes now to help them do that, and they are very happy to engage. Collaboration is now really part of the academic DNA in Ireland. That's something that, particularly with the multi-institutional SFI research centres over the last decade or more, we've really seen academics come together in pursuit of common goals. So yeah, freedom, yes, but people understand the need to collaborate and to get ideas translated.
Philip, your predecessor in the early pages of the strategy that was unveiled last year, Mark Ferguson, he talked about how, and this has been emphasised here this morning, that public investment in R&D and innovation is essential to catalyse and crowd in business investment in Ireland, and that both need to grow. He says, well, the EU commented, for the more advanced member states like Ireland, underinvestment in the public science base may jeopardise their capacity to be at the technological frontier and generate the knowledge and skills needed to fully reap the benefits of the digital and green transitions. Now, you alluded, I think, to the fact that a lot of the investment had taken place on the last wave pre-crisis. How well matched is the strategy that's there and public policy through government, programme for government, to the opportunities that are there with this 95 billion European fund?
Good, but not as good as it could be. And the not as good as it could be relates to our capacity to attract and retain talent. Like what's going to draw down significant engagement with the European Union is having the talent and mobilizing the talent. And we do well in both respects. There's extraordinary talent in the university system, but I'm back to this issue that talent is attracted by the capacity to work at the frontiers. And there is an outstanding concern here. Is Ireland willing to invest sustainably and in the long term in frontiers research? And if we do that, then the really bright people are going to want to continue to come and work here and stay here. And then the second trick is to mobilize people across institutions, including through things like centres, to draw that down. Though again, a lot of that money in a kind of a visionary by the European Union is available to the individual. There's kind of a mythology around this. One of the things that we need to remember about individual-led research or curiosity-led research is no academic colleague is going to waste their time working on something that they believe not to be the most important question they can address at that time. You know, this is your life's work. So one of the reasons that we sponsor colleagues to say, what is it you find really interesting? Is the things that they find most interesting are the things that are going to be most important. So again, what's the most important thing that we can do in order to optimize our participation in Horizon Europe, send a clear signal that there's sustained investment in fundamental as well as enterprise-facing research. I hope I didn't give the impression that we want to dial down the enterprise-facing research. No, we want to balance it with an equal and long-term commitment to sustainable. And just one final thing. Now, today we're celebrating the award of the Nobel Prize in Physics. That was for work that the people did way back in their careers, 20, 30, 40 years ago, at the fundamentals of quantum mechanics, that we're now saying, this is brilliant, we can use it for quantum computing. They had no idea back then that would be the application, but that is the application now. It's a long game. The long game is as important as the short game.
Orla, a key objective, and this is just to pick you up on the point Philip's making, of public policy is to recruit world-leading researchers and rising stars to move to Ireland. Is there much of that happening?
I want to answer a slightly different question first, Sean, as the politicians often do, because it follows on, although it's related. And it's something that I say whenever I have a microphone these days. I make the point about our PhD students. PhD students.
I was coming to that, but go ahead.
Okay,
anyway.
thank you. Yes, yeah. PhD students are at the core of any research system. Okay, they are the ones very often who are doing the experiments, who often are writing the papers under the supervision of their supervisor. But they, number one, they do the research that we prize so greatly. Number two, they are the researchers of the future. But they also move out into the economy and they take on jobs. Most don't go on into academia. Most go out into knowledge-facing jobs that are central to an economy like ours. We are not treating our PhD students nearly well enough at the moment in this country in terms of what we pay them by way of stipends. So those who are funded by competitive stipends, you can't just decide I'm going to do a PhD, rock up and give me my stipend. Okay, you have to compete for these stipends, and the national stipend at the moment it's just gone up in the budget from 18,500 a year to 19,000. Now you can't live on that in Dublin.
That's minimum wage.
Full stop. It's below minimum wage, it's below living wage. It is, you cannot live on that amount of money in Ireland. And we are seeing that at the coalface. PhD students are turning down offers in Ireland, or else they come to Ireland. We had a PhD student in UCD recently, came from Chile, halfway around the world, found they couldn't live in Ireland on that amount of money, and they went straight back home again. So you cannot sustain a research base if you don't have the PhD students.
Before I let you answer the question I asked,
which I've
I want Philip to
remember.
respond to the point you've just made.
I'd say two separate things. First of all, so I was down in the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies, 120 people, outstanding researchers, working at the forefront of physics, astronomy, and Celtic studies. Some of them will stay in that, others will end up in all sorts of walks of life, bringing that kind of skill to what they do. The PhD students in that room are as important to our future as the superstar research professors we might also be attracting. So, second, I work for the Minister. The Minister has just announced a €500 increase in stipends. I need to go and talk to the Minister now about is that going to work or not. So I think we're all hearing the message. It's an obvious message. How can we attract the best talent to come and research here if the stipend is below a living wage? But there's an obvious answer to that question.
But presumably the world-class researchers, we're talking about people who are above the PhD. So I want Orla to come in on this one because we were going there a few minutes ago. How do you get them here, and who are they?
We can get them here. So SFI have a great program, the Research Professorship Program, that targets absolute world leaders. Then there's the next stage, the early stage researchers, the stars of the future. So for example, we in UCD have this Ad Astra scheme at the moment, a big faculty recruitment scheme. UCC has one for they target areas, sustainability this year, where they hire people in cohorts. Then you get back, and I don't want to bang on about funding all the time, but you do get back to the funding of higher education, which is also below where we would want it to be. And our ability to hire, we are constrained in the numbers we can hire by an employment control framework. So, we're kind of hemmed in at every turn, but we are seeking to be as entrepreneurial and as responsive as we can, because we understand that it is exactly as you say. We need to develop our people within our system. We need to bring in new talent. But the new talent won't come if they can't get PhD students to come and work with them in Ireland. So every part of the system is interconnected. They won't come to Ireland if you attract them in with a big initial grant, but they can't see a sustainable path to research funding in Ireland.
John, is that a problem that you can identify with?
Absolutely. Coming from the other side, the commercial world as well, the non-research world, there's a war for talent. You know, we don't use that word anymore, but we're really we have our own scientists that we hire, and we're really struggling to hire people as well. What I would say is a lot of the Irish PhDs, whether they were born around or they've come in, they are excellent. With the candidates that we have are really, really superb. And maybe a lot of them may not stay in their deep domain area of expertise, but it's their way of thinking and their kind of aptitude. The skill sets are important, the basic science understanding, but many of the PhDs that we hire may not actually work in their job with us in their domain expertise, but they have a fantastic way of thinking, of problem solving, which is much, much superior. We've hired people in the States and in the UK and in Canada, and the quality of the Irish graduates is second to none in the world. They're absolutely world class. But big competitive situation out there to hire people.
One of the big themes of this program of engagements is investing and developing possibilities which will lead to a sustainable economy. So how important is that, Philip? And to what extent is it in proper focus?
It's extremely important. I mean, the government has a new strategy for research and innovation impact 2030, and that again is kind of rebalancing the portfolio. And really, like the opening statement of that talks about the vision for the future being about the environmental, social, and economic and human impacts of the research that we do. So that's written clear. And then separately, importantly, we have these 16 research centres that we're talking about. They've performed extremely well, and we're now taking the long view of where do we want those to be in the 2030 to 2050 decades. And in thinking that through, like the principal themes there are climate, food, digital health, those kinds of areas that we need national research infrastructures in those spaces, and we need them sustainably in the long term, because that's what's going to give us the capacity in our role to offer up like real and tangible solutions to climate, ecological biodiversity, food security issues.
And of course, day by day, Orla, we're seeing the price of everything rising. We see the energy crisis. How is that? I mean, it obviously is going to concentrate minds among people like yourself.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of running our operations, obviously, but also in terms of the research that we need to do for the longer term. And we've got really exciting things happening in Ireland in sustainability research, and it plays very well to our base. The research where we are most successful are, is there does it make sense for us as a country? And sustainability absolutely does for us as a green island. Do we have, a proposition in Ireland? And we really do. In terms of wind energy, you can see a huge proposition associated with Ireland. In terms of our oceans, again, there's a proposition there.
But we've been hearing about that for decades, haven't we? I mean, have we much to show for it?
Oh, we do. I mean, in terms of wind energy, UCD, in electronic engineering, my home department, we were researching wind energy back in the 1970s. My colleague Henri de Puer, I don't know if colleagues would remember Henri. So, we were doing that. And then as time went on, this became absolutely a national essential, and we worked so well with the electricity companies to bring that knowledge to the grid. Many of our graduates are working in terms of wind integration onto the grid. So you can see in terms of something like wind integration onto our grid, where Ireland is truly world leading, you can trace that back to research that was being done in UCD before it was popular and profitable back in the 1970s. So yeah, we've been doing it, we've been making progress. We can do more, we can put the foot down on the pedal, I think, a lot faster now.
And I suppose there are areas beyond the academic and the Science Foundation Ireland to do with planning and environmental concerns. I mean, there are those blockages over which I think you have no control.
But again, and Philip mentioned earlier the need for social sciences research to be embedded with the STEM disciplines, and we absolutely support that. And we're seeing great opportunities there. Someone like Lisa Ryan in the School of Economics in UCD is doing great work in terms of energy integration, and we need those different viewpoints to be brought to bear on the problem. Yeah,
John, as we know, scaling innovation and entrepreneurship, I mean, research and development, all of these ideas, and I take the point you were making earlier, there are differences and there are nuances between them, but key enablers, obviously, in developing a sustainable Irish economy now. Do you think we're structured appropriately? As somebody who's got a lot of experience internationally and has also been, if you like, having to put the theory into practice.
I do. I'm very, very positive. I think Ireland innovation entrepreneurship is a very positive story. I think the Irish innovation and entrepreneurship is about people. It's about telling stories, about transferring enthusiasm. I think Irish generally that's a cultural thing we're very good at, getting people to buy into your story, that kind of confidence you were talking about. But also I think physically, we're geographically quite compact, and there's an amazing ecosystem. Even events like this, where people want to come together and discuss the issues. We have the IDA, we have SFI, we have Enterprise Ireland, we've got the big universities, we've got other fantastic network groups like the American Chamber of Commerce, IRGG. So there's a really good innovation culture here. I also, you mentioned earlier, Sean, about the kind of the politics, and there's a lot of politics within academia, there's a lot of politics within medicine. I think one of the things that's worked really well is the technology parks. So if you look at Research Triangle Park in North America or even Silicon Valley, the models they followed is you have a center of excellence, a teaching center of excellence, you then would have a research institute, and then you have a technology park, and you have those three areas. So you have the academics and the Ivy quadrangles and the corduroy jackets or whatever it may be, but that's their center of excellence, and we as vulgar venture capitalists or entrepreneurs, we don't go in there. There's a little bit more industry liaison in an institute, and then ultimately you go down to the technology park. And I've seen conversations that wouldn't happen in a university campus about funding, about money, about collaborative research. Physically take those people out of those buildings and bring them to a technology park, and suddenly conversations can actually occur with venture capitalists and researchers. It's just a different environment. It's a very small kind of psychological tool, but bringing people to incubation centers and technology parks allow that translation of R&D and research excellence to a commercial. And then if it's done well, we're not talking about property speculation in the last boom. We're talking about intellectual property, which is what people have said, Moira Geoghegan-Quinn said, will be the crude oil of Ireland going forward. And I think we can really foster that intellectual property. We used to export our people, but now we're exporting our ideas. And I think that whole culture we have in Ireland, I think, sets us up to do very well going forward.
Yeah, and of course, as we know, Philip, it's not just in your own area that there's a new head. You're the new head of, or Director General of SFI, but there's a new CEO in Enterprise Ireland. There will shortly be a new Chief Executive in IDA Ireland. It's possibly an opportunity to review and reset, and against the background as well of Brexit happening, and it's caused us a lot of problems, but is there an opportunity there as well for Irish research, innovation and entrepreneurship, and particularly looking into that Horizon Fund in Europe?
Yeah, so first of all, yes, it is an opportunity. Like, change is always an opportunity for renewal. It's also important not to drop the ball. There is an opportunity. I mean, we really heavily depend upon UK networks of research. Many of us train there. We have very strong connections there. So again, this is one for the long game. I think the important thing for us is, we hope to make some announcements in the next couple of months about strengthening ties across the border on this island and east-west at the same time. So the fundamental thing we need to now is really maintain those strong cultural connections into the long term and help the UK, frankly, rebuild its relationship with European research funding insofar as we can, but certainly maintain our own links. There's one other point I'd like to make, if you don't mind. The thing that worries me most right now, when we talk about climate, is a kind of a transition that's a bit like the technology transfer, innovation transition, is how do we persuade governments and societies to decide? I think that was one of the core challenges of the pandemic. Was we know what the problem is, we know what the technical solutions are, and they involve very significant changes in behavior as well as adoption of those technical solutions. So there's a need for us, actually, as funders and academic institutions, to rethink that kind of policy and behavioral transfer in the way that we talk about technology transfer, and to invest in it. So I think we need to keep that in our mind. It's part of the reason why you don't think you see the benefits.
Yeah,
is because society as a whole and governments are not necessarily adopting the solutions that they know they need to adopt. And I'm beginning to see that as a failure on our part to persuade.
And in that context, I suppose, agriculture is an area which is close to the heart of this RDS society, going back centuries. And there's an expectation as well, I think, maybe a desperation on the part of some agriculture interest, lobbyists and so forth, that science is going to provide the solution to meeting the targets, or the way of meeting the targets that are being set for farmers or for agriculture in general?
Yeah. Well, it's a combination of both. I mean, if you take something like Farm Zero C, which is a very good example of engagement with the practitioner and saying, how are we going to work together in a manner that works for both of us to basically bring emissions to zero or net zero on a farm. So there's something that we need to change about our practice as researchers and educators in science. And it's similar to the transition we had to go to that got us kind of out of our ivory towers in terms of commercialization. There's kind of a new commercialization or a societalization. And the only way to do that is engagement and partnership, to sit with the citizen or the practitioner and say, this is our problem, here are the solutions. Why don't these solutions work? Can we talk to you about the adoption of these solutions? It's far from trivial. I mean, we're only beginning to think through how we do it. We sometimes rely a little bit on our social science colleagues, say maybe they'll fix it first, but actually, yes, they'll help us fix it. But it is a kind of a slow, hard practice of engagement. And like the Nordics have shown the way in a lot of this, and I think it's a lot to do with the way they govern themselves, experience of minority governments, for instance, where it's all about persuasion. So it's a long, hard road for us, I think, but one we really have to commit to. So it's a combination of innovation, classically rich. Here's a localized solution. Here's what will work for you, but also a big societal conversation.
You've gone from being a relatively anonymous academic to being a recognized face every time you step outside your door or your gate, Philip. What's the most interesting thing anybody has said to you by way of a total stranger? Is it abuse? Is it a compliment? A thank you? What is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that just to kind of close out, like Ireland's an extraordinary place to live. It's, and that I've been really, obviously Tony Hoolan's a very good friend of mine. He's had a bit of abuse. But what most of us have had is just this very gentle gratitude, like really touching and unintrusive. So whether people recognize me or not, I don't know. But every now and then somebody will just come up and say thanks.
I suspect they do, and you could prove that statistically too.
Yeah, I probably could. But if you don't mind, this is the thing about talent. Like, this is a really attractive country to live in. It's attracting talent. We just have to treat them well. Not exceptionally, it doesn't have to be a gilded package. You just have to treat people well and find them a place to live, and we'll thrive.
Yeah.
Orla will tell you what to tell Simon Harris. Then.
Dermot,
do you want to close the proceedings? Look, thanks indeed to all of you, John, Philip, and to Orla, and back to Dermot to close our proceedings.